to take a different route. Wisdom might say, take a different route. Now, okay, so brief story. Jennifer and I are in Papua New Guinea in '96, and we were young then, and we were hiking up the side of a mountain. And the couple that we were with, there were two other couples we were with, they were about our age now, then. Okay, so this was a while ago. So they were like about 50. And we kept getting ahead of them, way ahead of them, hiking up the hill, hiking up the side of the mountain. And so finally, we were with the nationals then. We weren't with the American crowd anymore. And the nationals we were with turned off the path. And I asked one of them, should we follow you or should we wait for the others? And she said, you can follow us. That's fine. So we go through this brush. We get to like an oasis where there's a water coming out of a rock. So they're getting a drink and stuff like that. And I'm listening to them talk. And then another man comes through the bush about 10, 15 minutes later. And he says, the other ones are taking too long. We're not going to wait for them. So let's just go on. And I realized where we were. We were on what was known as the shortcut. And as far as I know, my wife is the only woman, American woman, who's ever been on the shortcut. Because the women usually couldn't make it. American women couldn't make it up the shortcut. And so I said, take a picture. I think you're the only white woman who's ever been here, ever. So we climbed up the side of the mountain. Now, it's one of those things, instead of switching back and taking the easy route, we went straight up the side. So it's ways and ends. It was okay. We were young. It was fine. We survived. Very little scarring. She doesn't go to counseling much anymore for it. But we have Lady Wisdom also speaks in chapter 3, starting in verse 13. And the way of the wicked. So you can also, the way of the wicked is also stated here in chapter 3. Who, again, we could look at their ways and see where they get at the end. But for sake of time, we'll go on. There's a really interesting passage right in the middle of chapter 3 that shows that God created the universe by wisdom. And you can see the universe, you can see the end of the process that God used. Okay, so which way are we pursuing is the question in that. And that really is the issue of disposition. Which way are we facing? And then the last one, keeping watch, chapter 4. And like I mentioned, chapter 4 has 3 small sections that start with my son, verse 1, 10, and 20. And the interesting thing here is I called this keeping watch, but wisdom is not new. Do you remember when Job was being comforted by his friends? And they weren't offering him much advice. And he said, are you the only wise people in the world? When you die, will wisdom die with you? Okay, which is that was not a nice thing for Job to say, but he said it. Wisdom, each generation doesn't have to come up with what wisdom is. We don't have to create wisdom. We don't have to pretend to be wiser than our parents were wise. Right? Wisdom exists. And sometimes what we do is we simply pass down the wisdom from one generation to the next. And the next generation has to learn it. They have to apply it. They have to want it. But in the first 9 verses, this is where the grandfather, the father says to the son, I learned wisdom from my father. And what I learned from my father, I'm passing down to you. So passing down wisdom to the next generation isn't hard. It's not difficult. It's all there. It's all, there's nothing to discover. But a lot of times that idea of being conservative is simply we're taking the wisdom that we received and we're giving it to somebody else. It's not rocket science. It's not, I don't know, what Daryl used to do. It's nothing like that. Atomic energy stuff. Not truck driving. It's a little bit easier than truck driving. No. And then he says, stay off the wrong path and don't swerve. So part of maintaining or keeping guard, keeping watch over the wisdom is just simply making sure you don't lose it. Now, which is a little bit of a thing here with Solomon, right? Because we all know that Solomon didn't guard and keep watch over the wisdom that he had received. And later in life, he acted foolishly. But yet here, his instruction is, don't forsake it. Don't lose it. Guard it. Don't wander from it. Don't forsake it. But hold on to it. Don't swerve from the path that you're on. If you're on the right path, don't be diverted from it. He said, don't let it escape from your sight. Keep it within your heart. Okay. These are the kinds of injunctions that Solomon is giving. And so we want to gain wisdom, and we want to pass that wisdom on to the next generation or to others. And but we have to guard it our whole lives. We have to keep hold of it. So I don't know if I like this question. What are you doing with your time? But the idea is, with our time, we're either holding on to the wisdom that's been given to us, or we're letting it slip. So, that question could be better stated. But anyway, that's kind of what I was after with that is are we letting it slip? Are we being careless? Are we not paying attention to where we're going? Or are we diligently holding on to it, keeping watch, and trying to guard that? So the last slide here, I just put the 4 questions on one sheet, and of course they're on your notes as well. But who do you ask for advice? Whose example do you follow? What way are you pursuing? And what are you doing with your time? Are you guarding the wisdom that you've been given? And these are attitudes that we need to have in order to become wise. These are decisions that we need to make. And I point this out in your notes. Wisdom is always making a choice. Sometimes between good and bad, sometimes between better and best. But wisdom is always trying to discern which is the better choice to make, given my options. And so in these first 4 chapters, we see the son is given options. He's given a choice to make. And so this is kind of how we have to set ourselves up for success with the Proverbs. So, any questions or comments you want? Joanne? Oh. Okay.
One is years ago. Well, okay, you didn't directly say that. You said something similar that I wondered about.
Yeah, so Joanne's asking a question about communion from last Sunday. When I was coughing my way through the message. Yeah, I take 1 Corinthians 11 as prescriptive, which means we are not allowed to deviate in what is given to us. And what is given to us is bread and grape juice, particularly unleavened bread and unleavened grape drink, which would be grape juice. So I suppose I might go with like a grape juice that doesn't have grape juice in it, like grape Kool-Aid maybe. But I don't know if I'd do that. No, I don't think we can play with those. So what I had said is in Papua New Guinea, they don't have grape juice, so they don't celebrate communion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, sorry. Well, she just wouldn't take the grape juice. And it's part of being in a fallen world. It's not necessarily her fault. We don't, kick her out of the church or anything, but we just have to say, if you can't participate in that, you can't participate in that. It's kind of like the oyster crackers. They're gluten and they're leavened. Well, okay, there's a lot of problem with oyster crackers. But, so my wife can't have them if they're gluten, which is why she came up with the recipe for the gluten-free communion bread. Otherwise, my wife wouldn't, or she'd have her own, but then that's, not one bread, it's not one body.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Rock was.
Yes.
Like,
Well,
I just look at it like there's rocks everywhere.
there are rocks everywhere. There is.
It wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, there's a verse in the New Testament, and I think I want to say it's 1 Corinthians, but let me see if I can come up with it. That seems to indicate, 1 Corinthians 10. This is where it comes from. So pastor's not, crazy. You're like,
I definitely
what?
got that on my
1 Corinthians 10, I want you to know, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food. So it's talking about the manna. And all drank the same spiritual drink. So this is how, this context is food offered to idols. Okay, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. So Paul is the one who uses that phrase. That we see as we read through the Old Testament narrative, every time they need water, there's a rock there that they get it from. Now, you're right, in the topography, there's rocks everywhere. It's a rocky hillside, most of the places where they're at. So we read that and we go, oh, here there's a rock, and then they traveled, it's kind of like traveling to the Twin Cities. Well, I went to Quick Trip, and then I went to Quick Trip in Norwood Young America, and then I went to Quick Trip in Plymouth. Like you can plan a route halfway across the country where you keep hitting a Quick Trip everywhere you go. Exit 28 in Wisconsin on I-94, whatever. So you got all these like Quick Trips that you can hit, and we're like, well, it's not the same Quick Trip that followed you on the whole trip. You kept going to different Quick Trips, right? Okay, so that's when we read the Old Testament, that's the picture we get. There's another rock, and there's another rock, and there's another rock. Okay, Paul says the rock followed them around. Which is a funny mental picture to us, that there's like this boulder that's running alongside of them or something, right? So if Paul's speaking metaphorically, as every time they needed it, the rock showed up. Just like every time we need, Christ is here, providing for us. So if we could take it metaphorically like that, if Paul means it metaphorically, we could take it metaphorically. If Paul's taking it literally, it was the same rock every time they needed water that just showed up miraculously. It could do that too. Then that would be the option of saying if it was the same rock that was following. But that's where it comes from. Well, he stated it like Paul states it. The rock followed them around.
Well, also with the fire.
Yep.
And then the rock.
Yeah, like,
I didn't take it. I
Right.
took it literally.
Yeah.
I just
right.
rock.
Well, and And whether or not the rock was traveling with that, I mean, we don't know. If the rock was rolling around the countryside, or whenever they needed it, there happened to be, the rock was there, and it magically appeared again, for which they could take water from it. We don't know. We don't know that. But that's where it comes from. Does that
That
help?
was a lot clearer.
Okay. Good. All right, any other questions about today's Sunday school lesson? Some other sermon you heard somewhere else? No. All right. Brian, would you like to close us in prayer today? Amen. Thank you.